And good morning, everybody. Hi, I'm Steve Sabludowsky, publisher of BayouBuzz.com. And today we have the esteemed Dr. James Richardson from LSU, and he is one of the economists who the state of Louisiana relies upon in terms of the revenue estimating conference. There are two economists, actually three economists, if I'm not mistaken. Dr. Richardson, good morning, and thank you so much for being with us. This is going to be really exciting in terms of the information that we discussed, especially given the fact that right now as we speak, there is a special session going on in terms of the incredible budget crisis that we have. Those are my terms, but I think a lot of people might agree.
Good morning to you, Steve, and thank you for inviting me to participate in your discussion.
Sure, thank you so much. Now, what I'd like to do, if you don't mind, is as we speak, is to talk about the revenue estimating conference, just to give an overview in terms of what that is, and so why don't you take us through that in terms of what the conference is, how it got started, and the information that's provided to the state of Louisiana.
Well, the Revenue Estimating Conference got started back in 1987, and it was created in reaction to another major fiscal crisis, and that was in the late 80s when the state was literally running out of money and could not pay its bills on time. And we had another $1 billion to $1.5 billion problem. It was created to take the politics out of the revenue estimates, and that committee was essentially 4 people, and the 4 people will be the governor or his or her representative, usually the commission administration, the president of the Senate or a person he asked to serve in his behalf, and typically it's been the president of the Senate, the Speaker of the House, or a person he or she may ask to serve in that capacity, but typically it's been the Speaker. And then one independent economist who will have some interest or some knowledge of forecasting and the state stack structure. Well, I was chosen to be on there in 87, and I've served in that capacity ever since. It's a 4-person committee. And I guess the thing that makes it different is the decisions about how much money we have to spend requires unanimous vote. So in that sense, my vote as an independent economist is just as powerful as the governor's vote, or as the president of the Senate's vote, or as the Speaker of the House vote. So this is that was one of the instruments to say, okay, they can't play with the numbers. They can't try to just up the revenue numbers if they don't have enough money to spend, and just act as if we have enough money to spend. And I think from the point of view of the revenues, we've had that acting going on for since 1987. We have, I think, diminished or at least taken away the so-called playing with the revenue numbers. Now, the problem with that is that doesn't say all the forecasts are going to be right all the time. They're not. We have to be very careful about, and particularly when you have volatile revenue sources such as minerals revenues, or you have volatile revenue sources such as corporate income tax revenues, they naturally go up and down, and they go up and down rather dramatically at times. So your forecasts are going to be wrong, almost just by the nature of it.
Sure.
But we're trying to make sure that we cannot rig the numbers. We do not do something politically to change numbers. Now, what that's really meant is it was created to get out of a major fiscal issue back in the 80s. The system has worked very nicely. Now, what's happened over the last 8 or 9 years, and I guess this is only to be expected, is that there are different ways of trying to play the system. And that is, okay, now let's bring in money. We allocate money from funds that are not necessarily going to be long-standing funds, but have a short-term life expectancy, and we use money to fill the budget in from that angle. So I think what's happened in the last 8 years in particular is we have used different methods to try to get around our real budget problems by using money that has been stored away for a different purpose that we're able to move to the general fund. And again, all perfectly legal, nothing illegal about it, but not necessarily sustainable long-term fiscal policy. And
Sure.
That's where we are right now.
Now, I mentioned other economists. I'm assuming that the governor is going to rely upon his economists for information. Likewise, the legislature is going to rely upon their economists.
Yes, we have 2 economists who present information to us. One is from the Division of Administration, and then one is from the Legislative Fiscal Office. And they give their best estimates, and typically they're not far apart. There's some variation, obviously. And they have to tell us what are you using as your basic assumptions about what's happening to the general economy, nationally, globally, and statewide, what's happening to the energy markets, what's happening in terms of our growth in the population. So they tell us all these variables or all these different attributes that will certainly have an impact on revenue collections. And we get to look at those. And again, they're pretty close on those. They don't deviate tremendously. And then they tell us, well, these are our numbers. This is what we think the state will get in income tax collections over the next 3 or 4 years, in sales taxes, severance taxes, and so on down the line. And then we have to make a choice. Okay, which of these forecasts do we live with? And we typically choose either the fiscal office or the division. We don't mix and match. We choose one, and we choose one that we think will hopefully be the right number, because everything's a projection. Everything's built on this is what we think will happen. If the energy markets sort of change overnight, as they can, then obviously the forecast gets cloudy about if it's good or bad. And this is what's happened to us in the last year, for example. If we go back to May of 2015, and we established a budget with the price of oil being about $60 a barrel. And in May of 2015, all of the outside forecasters, all of the energy analysts, all of the so-called international experts said that that was a good, reasonable, prudent number. So we put that in the budget. Now, it just so happened that before you turn around, you can suddenly see that's not necessarily a good number. And by November, we came back and we changed it to $48. But even by January, when we came back in January, or early February, we had to change it again. And now we got it down all the way to $30. So that number changed dramatically. That's not the only problem with the budget, but that indicates a problem as you forecast your revenues. Obviously, there are certain factors, and in Louisiana, the price of oil becomes a very, very important factor. It can wreck your estimates very quickly. In this situation, that's one of the factors that kind of made the budget issue a little bit more dour than it has been.
I mean, that's a decline by 50%.
Yes.
I mean,
that's a big number, yeah. And you have to remember, even before that, it had been even higher than that. And it had been averaging the 90s. Everybody felt good about that, and it certainly added a little money to our budget. But that did not stay there. Now they're talking in the long term that 30 are certainly, nobody's talking 90 now. They might be talking optimistically 50, but that's over a 2 or 3 year period. But again, the markets are very volatile. They can change very quickly. Nobody, and right now I think the state is looking at, over the next 2 years, a budget based on very, very low oil prices, which I think is a prudent thing to do.
Sure, absolutely.